Unfortunately, the issues that affect men often get little attention, are unknown or deemed unimportant. But men's issues do matter. They affect many lives, and it's important that we not only acknowledge them, but as a society do something about them. What follows are a number of issues you should be aware of because men's issues matter.
In this video, we're going to be going over some legal inequalities that women have over men. So let's jump straight into this. Women have the right to genital integrity, despite almost every qualified pediatric association issuing statements that circumcision is not a requirement unless there is medical necessity for it, such as, for example, with phimosis. It is still an incredibly widespread practice that is still legal in practically every first world country. Female genital mutilation has rightfully been outlawed, whereas for male genital mutilation, despite studies linking it to decreased efficiency of nerve response, pain and trauma, which isn't helped by almost all of these practices being done without anesthesia, has practically no benefit, has increased sexual difficulties, may require even more medical attention for the first few years of life, and more. The next one is the right not to have to sign up for the Selective Service. Now, this is a long-standing right afforded to women over men. I should clarify that I'm talking about the requirement only for men to sign up, rather than the draft itself. If a man chooses not to sign up for the Selective Service, the federal penalties are $250,000 in fines, a felony charge with a maximum sentence of 5 years, or a mixture of both. As well as this, men who choose not to sign up for the Selective Service also forfeit their rights to federally provided loans and grants. Women have the right to exclusive benefits purely for being a business owner who is a woman. There are a ton of resources purely for women in this domain, such as loans, funnily enough, free grant money, and tax breaks, straight from the taxpayer. This is discrimination, and it also treats women as less abled than their male counterparts. Women have the right to choose parenthood, not just for herself, but also for her partner as well. Across the Western world, reproductive rights are still only afforded to women. Even though some states may have ludicrous restrictions on such, women still have more freedom in this regard. If a woman doesn't want to become a mother, she can easily remain abstinent, use birth control pills, use day-after pills, use female condoms, IUDs, tubal ligation, etc. Upon getting pregnant, she has more options afforded to her, such as being able to get an abortion, put the child up for adoption, which doesn't require notification of the father, despite the opposite rightfully requiring such. Or she can leave the child in the hands of the state in accordance with the safe haven law. What are men's options here? Remain abstinent, condoms, or vasectomy. If she gets pregnant, she has the law on her side and can choose to force a man into parenthood, even if he isn't ready to become a father, or if he doesn't want to be one, full stop. The Duluth model in the United States, which is employed almost nationally. This is a model which promotes primary aggressor laws, which assumes that the larger and less emotional person is the aggressor. Those who are arrested for this are mostly male, even if the man is the one who is making the call to report an abusive wife. As well as this, almost all domestic violence crisis centers in the US are specifically tailored for women, not acknowledging that men can be victims of domestic violence as well. Lastly, female perpetrators are excluded from certain rape definitions. So, for example, in the UK, rape is clearly defined as an offense if he penetrates intentionally the vagina, anus, or mouth of another person with his penis, and consent wasn't given. Now, this definition is blatantly sexist against men. It excludes any perpetrators of rape who happen to be women from having raped them. Only other men can rape other men. Under this definition, women clearly have more legal rights than men in the Western world, and there is a lot of sexism in their favor. Though women may lack the right to go about fully topless, which is dependent on the state and city, this doesn't compare to the legal inequalities that men face, and more attention needs to be paid to these areas.
Child custody. In over 80% of the contested cases in the United States, mothers get primary custody of the children. For the few fathers who do get custody, the mother usually has some serious issues and often did not show up to court or participate in the process at all. In the majority of cases that are contested, that are decided upon by a judge, the father is given weekend time and a few holidays, a small percentage of the time. The risk factors that the court considers, drugs, abuse, mental health issues, etc., are considered to be worse and more of an issue if the father has the issues than if the mother has the issues. The courts currently use the best interest of the child doctrine, but this has shown itself not to be in the child's best interest. A child with an active relationship with their father is far more likely to finish high school, to go to college, to be financially stable as an adult. A child without an active father is far more likely to be incarcerated, to drop out of school, to abuse drugs, or to be just a general criminal. While joint decision-making between divorced parents is becoming a far more common occurrence, and often results in shared 50-50 custody, the courts haven't changed much, still awarding custody most of the time to the mother. This needs to change because male and children issues matter.
Male genital mutilation is a direct violation of our basic human rights to bodily integrity. But while most of the world champions to end female genital mutilation, boys are often wholly forgotten. We see little girls suffering in filthy conditions in third world countries, losing functional parts of their genitals, but conveniently ignore the little boys suffering the same injustice in the same conditions. Not only that, but it's still widely acceptable in Western societies. In the U.S., there were 117 deaths of baby boys due to circumcision complications on average per year for supposed medical benefits that could have easily waited until the man in question was old enough to decide for himself whether or not removal of the foreskin was best for him. These numbers may not be entirely accurate, as circumcision complications are often not directly referenced as cause of death. We often hear boys sleeping through their circumcision, when in reality they've gone into shock, their body shutting down from extreme pain with little or no anesthetic being given. The medical benefits of male genital mutilation are shockingly similar to the myths surrounding female genital mutilation. The claim that removal of the foreskin is cleaner, for example, is entirely false. The foreskin is attached to the head of the penis, keeping it clean and protecting it. In order to perform a circumcision on a baby boy, they must first tear the foreskin away from the glands, creating an open wound that is then put into a dirty diaper. If you are interested in more information, please visit CanFap for Canadian viewers, the Whole Network or Intact America for American viewers, and CircInfo for Australian viewers.
The sentencing gap. If we control for the arrest offence, criminal history and other prior characteristics when comparing the criminal sentencing of males and females, we find that females are twice as likely to avoid incarceration if convicted, and males receive 63% longer sentences than females do on average. Race is another factor when it comes to sentencing, but the gender sentencing gap is 6 times larger than that of the racial sentencing gap. This is a blatant violation of human rights. Guilt and length of sentence should not be determined by either race or gender, but by the evidence presented and the facts of the case. The sentencing gap is unknown by the majority of the public and gets very little attention. This needs to change because men's issues matter.
There is a silent and growing epidemic in the Western world, and the chances are that you've been affected by it in some way, be it first-hand, second-hand, etc. That growing and silent epidemic is male suicide. My paternal side of the family has had 2 first-hand experiences with suicide. I've lost 1 step-uncle and 1 step-grandfather. The grandfather being the most recent loss. He died in December of 2015 via carbon monoxide poisoning. His son was in his 20s. I cannot remember his exact age as I was very young at the time, and his cause of death was hanging. These may be 2 personal anecdotes anecdotal examples, but they are part of an ever-increasing problem. A problem that seemingly society does not want to talk about or even seems to care about. This video is about male suicide, its causes, and how we can deal with this problem and to stop men and boys from killing themselves. Male suicide rates are increasing. In the United Kingdom in 2014, the latest figures I could find, there were 6,122 suicides registered. Men accounted for 16.8 per 100,000, the highest since 2001. In the United States, suicide as a whole increased by 25%, with men being the majority at 20.7%. In Canada, the suicide rate was 17.3 per 100,000 in 2012, and in Australia in 2014, the suicide rate overall was 12.2 per 100,000, and over 75% of those victims were men. As we can see, this is a problem that is not just a British problem, but a Western problem, as men are killing themselves at higher numbers every year. The prevailing trends are that those men in their 20s and in their 40s to 50s often are the ones who commit suicide the highest, not just out of their demographic, but as an overall majority of all suicides. So what is causing these male suicide rates to soar? What could possibly be the reason why men would want to kill themselves in ever-increasing numbers? Well, to tell the truth, we can never truly know the reason why as a group they kill themselves. Individually, we could if they happen to leave notes, but we can debate and try to understand why they would. So now we must turn to what we, as a society, can do for men to end this epidemic of suicide and to improve their quality of life. In all of my research, one thing that keeps cropping up again and again is awareness. The public, and this includes men, not just women, are simply unaware of the scale of the problem. This could be due to a variety of factors. We live in a society where children or women are viewed as more sympathetic characters. We see on the news and on the television stories of their tragedies and adverts for charities that deal specifically with their issues, and until very recently there was few to none for men. So for decades the public was largely in the dark about these issues until things like Movember and in the UK the campaign against living miserably or calm were implemented. However, most people still do not know the full extent of the issues. Some will say it's due to men being unable to express their problems, others will say they do not actually have any basis to express their problems. It's all up for debate, but this is perhaps one of the key ways we can help deal with the issue. A second way would be, in the words of Glenn Poole, stop victim blaming, which in his words are because in society we view women as having problems and men being problems. So the idea of this would be alien to people. I agree with the sentiment, although I do not know to what extent men are viewed as problems in regard to this topic. But avoiding victim blaming, and as we shall soon discuss, creating ways to help men and to avoid pointing the finger at them is a good way. Let us talk about that, shall we? In the words of Dr. John Ashfield at the Australian Institute of Male Health and Studies, the practice of blaming men for holding in their emotions and not seeking help is at best lazy and simplistic. Basically, we should stop pointing the finger at men and instead mobilise people to get active in their support, to raise funds and to create places where men can go for support. It could be anything from men's groups, councils and even helplines, by providing them the same facilities that we can offer women but catered to their needs. According to Professor John MacDonald, Director from Men's Health Information and Resource Centre, when practitioners are conscious of the need to be male-friendly, the impact is very noticeable. What he means is developing male-friendly places where they can receive help will allow more men to come forward for help. One way would be to create literature, a whole academic study devoted to men's issues and particularly male suicide. This will not only increase our knowledge, but can only help save lives. This in turn can help charities and advocates in raising more awareness. But overall, we need to, as a society, learn to be more compassionate, to listen to men, to be more understanding of men, and not to push them back. We can isolate these people, we can simply wallow in ignorance of this problem, and we need to combat it. And it starts not just with the solutions I outlined before, but with our attitudes. Our entire cultural attitude towards men and boys has to change to something more empathetic and sympathetic, to see them on the same level as women and girls. That will take years, and it is a gargantuan task. Ultimately, this video was just for raising awareness in a short space of time. I hope I informed you all and that it was a good enough entry into perhaps learning more. Until next time.
Please feel free to mirror this video or share it on Facebook and Twitter.